back to the front office, that's going to get back to the front office as well. And like, yo, why isn't this player getting in and taking care of his body? Well, it's slowly shifting to that same way of like, hey, why isn't this player working with our mental performance staff? They're starting to see the value in it where it's like totally normal. It's not a knock on anybody. And we're being supported from the very top of the organization, which is just pretty cool. So it's like, if somebody isn't working with one of us, it's like, what's wrong with this dude? Everybody needs to get their work in, their mental in.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think it's a super positive thing, right? To start to see that shift. So my next question or thought for you, I'm sure you could write a book on this, right? But if you could go back to high school, Adam, and relay some of the experiences and tools you've learned to accomplish what you've accomplished, right? And knowing now what you know, like what would some of those things be, right? Like what are some of the things that you really, maybe the top of that list, right? Like what do I really wish when I was 17 I knew now or
Yeah,
knew
that's
then?
a such a good question. And to set the stage, so my father is a 10-year major league veteran. He's a major league all-star. My grandfather was an 18-year major league veteran, World Series winner, Cy Young Award winner. And then there was what I perceive to be poor little Adam just trying to follow in his father and grandfather's footsteps. And I think of like my high school days as a baseball player. And that's probably why I acted like I didn't care, because if I failed, I didn't want other people to know that I actually cared so much. But so I always felt some external pressure to perform, to follow in their footsteps, which in retrospect was unfortunate because it was pressure that I added by myself. Fortunately, in my house, my dad never forced us to do anything sport related or anything like that. Like I never had to go to the baseball field. He was super encouraging and influential, but never forceful. So to answer your question, what I know now that I wish I would have known then was honestly just to go out and have fun. That the old spotlight effect that I think other people are watching me way more than they actually are. They're worried about their own selves. I wish I would have known that as a high school player, where I could have just had fun. People probably didn't even know that I was my pedigree. Some may have, but in retrospect, I just wish that I wouldn't have put that pressure on myself to be somebody who I wasn't. And unfortunately, that took me like 3 years into the pro game to finally get that monkey off my back and just be like, yo, I'm Adam Law. I'm going to go do my own thing. So that would be kind of at the top of the list of just going out and having fun.
When you talk about getting that monkey off your back, like what do you mean? I mean, we know what you mean by that, but you said just go out and have fun and be me, right? You also said the word spotlight. Spotlight is bright. When we talked to Walter last week, he talked about the spotlight, and if you're the shortstop and the ball's hit to you, you're the pitcher, and it's the bottom of the set, whatever it is. That spotlight is so hot, and I think players get so worried about who, what, why around them that they lose that focus on really why they're there and lose that focus on themselves. Well, if I don't do this, my coach is going to be upset. Or if I don't do this, the older guys aren't going to respect me, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And they almost like toss their self-identity out, out the window and try to become somebody else. So when you talk about, I had to get that monkey off my back, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, that was, again, I was so concerned about becoming a major leaguer so that I could fulfill the prophecy of a third generation major leaguer. And that was the monkey that was on my back. And so when I would go 0 for 4, I would feel like crap because I'm not getting a step closer to the major leagues to do this as a third generation professional athlete. Instead of more healthily, if that's even a word, going out and playing for myself because I want to be a major leaguer or I want to be the best version of myself, not I want to be a major leaguer because my father and grandfather were. Had I been able to reframe it that way, who knows if I would have made it to the big leagues? Probably not. But the nights where I was 0 for 4 and performing poorly would have been a lot better, and my attitude and my experience during those lows would have been a lot better and healthy for me as a human being, probably better for my relationships with my siblings and friends and fans. Like, just a different perspective as opposed to doing it for somebody else. I would have been doing it for me earlier on. Again, until year 3 was like, okay, I met with a really awesome mental skills coach, and he's the one that helped me outline and kind of reframe my view on why I want to make it to the major leagues.
Would you say that that was kind of that turning point in your career mentally? Like, was that kind of the shift, right? Like, I remember when we came up and we were able to see you play in Tacoma, right? And you had a chart on all the pitchers that you'd seen, right? And you were explaining all that, right? Like, does all that kind of come from the same place of being mentally grounded? And was that kind of the shift in your career?
Yes, I had kept the little notebook thing that I had showed you guys over the course of the 7 years that I was playing. And so I always kind of had an edge in that I knew that I was physically probably an average player at the professional level, but I was looking for anything on the margins that I could get a leg up on my opponents. And I would say for 90% of professional baseball players, that's what it is. You got your 10% that are going to be better than everybody else, regardless of how much sleep they get, regardless of what they eat. If they work out, they're going to be major leaguers. The other 90% of us are just clawing for ways to get a leg up. And yeah, honestly, that was probably the turning point of I'm going to play for myself and I'm going to do me, as opposed to trying to follow in this shadow that I had cast on myself. I'm sure other people talked about it, and I'm sure, family gossip, it went on there. Hey, how's Adam doing? Is he going to be, but like, that's completely out of my control. And so once I was able to really hone in on what's in my control, can I commit to that day in and day out, whether I'm 4 for 4 or 0 for 4, that really helped me perform better and also live a fuller life experience off of the field too.
So if I'm in a crowd right now and I'm watching you speak and I raise my hand and say, Adam, can you tell me what was in that book? How did that book operate? Because I know what you're talking about as an adult, but a high school player may be like, well, what do you mean you carried a book? What do you mean you look for margins? What does that mean?
Yeah. So I had 2 books actually that are some of my go-to resources as interventions with players to show that, like, this is something that can really help you. My first book was a reflection exercise, and I wrote down every single day one thing that I did good, one thing that I did bad, and one thing that I'm going to improve on the next day. So I can go back to when I was on a 20-game hitting streak, hitting homers, not swinging, missing, and seeing what my thought processes were. And then I can also go back when I was going bad. I was 0 for 15, 0 for 20, what my thought processes were. And that probably helped me climb out of slumps a little bit faster than somebody who hadn't had that record keeping, that reflection exercise. And so that was the first one, was the reflection exercise. The second was I kept a book in the dugout, and after every single at bat, I wrote down who the pitcher was, what pitches I saw, whether I swung at it, missed it, and like kept that as my own record. We're going to have our scouting reports that have all the data that you could dream of. But sometimes what my eyes tell me is a little bit different than what's printed out on the PDF or what's on the iPad. And so I was kind of able to triangulate the two, my record, the scouting report, with what I thought, and formulate my plan that way. So I had a little bit more information than other people did because I had the information in my own 2 eyes. And if you have 600 at bats over the course of a season, plus a season before, you're not going to be able to remember every single pitcher or what their pitch looked like. But just by simply filling out that little record kind of helped me, I think, get a leg up. It kept me involved in the game. Wasn't screwing around at the end of the dugout with my teammates, but there was probably that going on too. But it was something that kind of helped me win on the margins, I think.
So I love that, because coming from a state like Utah, right? I don't think we're looked at as a baseball state. We're not Arizona, we're not California, we're not Texas, Florida. So what would you tell, the Utah kid right now who's like, hey, like, I want to go play in the SEC, or I want to do this, I want to do that, right? Like where should that kid start with his process? Like he's a sophomore in high school, average high school player. What does he do? Where does he go?
Yeah, really, really a good question. And I wish I had this answer when I was a sophomore in high school, but this is a large part of what I do as a mental performance coach. Of we have guys that are in double A and they want to make it to the big leagues. Same kind of framework as your question. We have a sophomore in high school in Utah and he wants to go play at LSU. Okay, cool. Let's write down LSU on a piece of paper. That's where you want to go. Right? That's the main goal. That's where you're going to put all of your resources, all of your time, energy to go to LSU. Awesome. Now let's backtrack from there. What's it going to take for you to go to LSU? List down all the things. You got to probably have grades. You're going to have to hit a certain amount of homers or your exit velocity, whatever. You might have to play in some showcases. I know that we talked about that before we started recording, of the validity of all the travel stuff. But yeah, and just totally backtrack from what is it going to do? What do you need to do to get there? And you're going to come up with this long stairway list. Awesome. That's now your process. So it's probably going to, so for example, if you need to have a 105 exit velocity, let's say, what's your exit velo right now? It's 95. Okay. How are you going to get to 105? Probably some swing mechanics, but more than likely your body. So that's going to be nutrition and the weight room. All right, cool. What's my nutrition plan and what is my strength plan? That's going to be my process for tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And so it's going to be kind of a spider web out from your end goal, which really breaks it down into digestible, realistic steps for you to get there. And the best performers in the world that I've worked with, they embrace the boredom of consistency. And it's going to get old as a skinny high school kid pounding 4,000 calories if that's part of your process. But if you really want to get to where you want to get to, that's part of it. And you're going to have to embrace that boredom of doing the things that you probably don't want to do and they're not that fun, but that's what it's going to take.
So that process, that list, that can be really overwhelming, right? For the kid who say wants to play high level and he's 5'10", 145 pounds, right? It's kind of a lot is against him at that time. We create that process list. We make it tangible. We make it visible. We make it so we can see it and invest in it on a daily basis. But what's the process for him engaging in it? Like I find a lot of athletes, especially athletes who want to play at a high level, I'm not sure they know the barriers. I'm not sure they know really what it takes. You know, we've talked about this and I don't want to get into too deep. We've talked about it on past podcasts about the average player hashtagging LSU or whatever. The reality is that's going to be a monumental task to make that happen. And in fact, genetically, you just might not be prone to ever let it happen, right? But when we see these lists, when we see these tasks, it can be so overwhelming to any athlete, whether it's an elite level athlete or a high school athlete. What's the idea? How do we approach that? I get it. We see it, we break it down, but what's the mental performance? What's the trigger that says I must engage in this daily if indeed I want a positive outcome?
Yeah. Honestly, I would argue that breaking it down into the simple, digestible tasks makes it easy. Because now when I go to bed as a high school sophomore and I wake up at 5 a.m. to eat a big breakfast and go to the weight room, that's what I need to do that day. I'm not trying to make the LSU club tomorrow, but really that's what the process is. And if you're able to fully trust that process, that will eventually lead to the result. That's where you make your money. To the point of whatever it was, 5'10", 140 pounds, I also think you need to be realistic about what your end goal is. Now, I'm by no means am I saying that you need to sell yourself short, because the best in the world, if they thought that, if they didn't think that they could be an MVP caliber player, they wouldn't be. Like those dudes are a little bit off their rocker, for lack of a better term. Like those guys think differently, and because they thought differently, they were able to be who they are. So I'm not trying to minimize anybody's dreams or goals, but it's also important to be realistic about, the outcome or what might happen. So setting a realistic outcome goal, but then breaking it down in the process, I think is digestible and is doable, and it's not overwhelming because it's what I need to do tomorrow. And then you dominate that. What do I need to do the next day and the next day? And if you stack those small wins over the course of 2 or 3 years, you got yourself a chance to obtain whatever you're trying to obtain.
Yeah, and I think that's where you said something a few minutes back that I think kids really struggle with, and it's embracing the routine, embracing the boredom, right? Because to be a great baseball player, you're doing so many of the same things every single day. You right, and so is that something you see even at the highest level? Maybe obviously not with the top performers, but is that still a struggle for some guys, even when they're getting paid?
Absolutely. And I would even say it is a challenge with the top performers, even dudes that are making like $30 million a year. It's still hard to show up to the ballpark if you're not playing well, or if you've got stuff going on at home. But guess what? They show up because that's what you have to do to be elite. And again, they embrace the boredom of consistency. When they're struggling, they just fight to get through the next day or the next drill or the next swing. And after they do that, okay, what's next? We see it a lot in spring training when guys, they just want to get out, have the season start. Well, we have to have a team fundamental defensive play that we're working on. And those are the worst, but you got to do it. And so you do it. And then you figure out what the next thing on the schedule is and the next thing. And really, those guys are just so good at compartmentalizing what's going on off the field. What do they need to do on the field? And then I think I read a story of draw a line in the sand. The dude, he can't walk, and so he's army crawling, and he just drew a line in the sand, and he army crawled past it, and drew a line in the sand, and army crawled past it. Like, that's the process right there, and getting through just the mundane, the boredom of what it takes to be really good, especially in baseball when we're playing 162 games in 180 days. It's what it takes.
Yeah, that's a grind, man. And you said earlier, and I've had this conversation with so many people, they'll ask, well, how does someone make it to professional sports? To play middle linebacker in the NFL, you got to be a little crazy, right?
Yeah, you do.
You look at some of these guys who aren't the prototypical, if you talk baseball, 6'3", 220 pounds, they're those undersized guys. They're different. Something's going on. They have a different process. They have a different mentality. I look back it was probably in my 20s, like Dustin Pedroia.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that guy physically, right, maybe doesn't fit the mold, but he was phenomenal, right? He did what he had to do. Undersized, Altuve. Like, how does that guy, how does he do it? Right. And I think I like what you said about don't sell yourself short, but there is don't think for a minute, if maybe you're not that prototypical or, classic professional style athlete, body genetically prone, things like that, that you don't have to be a little different or do a little more. I'm going to tell you what, it's a lot harder for Dustin Pedroia than it was for Derek Jeter. That's just the reality of it. Do you see that in the minor leagues? Do you see guys that get there and it's too much, right? It's just that they can't get over that hump. Maybe they don't fit the prototypical model of what's supposed to be there. And when those guys hit that wall, from your job, what you do, because I know the organization's looking on you saying, hey, we got 5 million guys wrapped up in this. We got $5 million wrapped up in this guy. You better figure him out. Right? How do you deal with that? What's your process?
Yeah. So you're spot on. It's easier for some guys. It's easier for the first round and second round picks who get all the bonus money than it is for an 18th rounder that signed as a college senior and he got $10,000 or whatever. And so at the same time, I don't want to discount the work that the top round picks, the show horsemen who are just, they have the physique, they've got all the tools. Like, I don't want to discount the work that they've put in, because certainly they've put in the work. But I also understand that it's oftentimes an underdog story for the smaller dudes, the guys that didn't get the first round money or whatever. And so when, if for to your example, if a player is just like, dude, I don't know what's going on, I don't fit in here, I'm sick of showing up, I'm not playing every day, which is kind of a big thing in baseball. You want to be playing every day in the lineup. Really, it goes back to two things: is why are you playing? And when you signed up to play, you also signed up for all this crappy stuff that's going to happen. And so then we look at, okay, why are you playing? What do you value? Most of the time it's, hey, I'm playing baseball because I love to play, or I'm playing baseball to make a lot of money and support my family. All right, cool. We have that established. Now, what's in your control that you can have an impact on tomorrow? And sometimes that's in the player, it's a conversation with the manager of going in and having a tough conversation. Hey, why am I not playing every day? What can I do to play every day? Or it's, why you're not playing every day. Well, now you need to go out and challenge yourself in the batting cage. So it's really trying to get out of the internal thoughts of playing GM in our mind, which is what we kind of a common phrase that we use, and getting to an external stimulus of what can you do right now that will better your situation, that's within your control. So really that's what it is defining why they play, and then taking action steps that are within their control to better their situation.
In your position now, right? Like what does your day-to-day look like? Are you working with all levels? Are you just with the big league club? Maybe, walk us through a little bit of what that looks like as a coach at that level, mental performance coach at that level.
Yeah. So I'm only in the minor leagues at the moment. So we have, on our team, we have 4 mental skills practitioners. We have one gentleman who's with the major league team all 162 games of the year. And then we have 3 of us who are in the minor leagues, and day to day is so different because we travel and we have 5 minor league teams. And so we kind of divide and conquer. And so for example, I'm here in Arizona with our minor league team in Arizona. I'll get to the ballpark. I'll get to the ballpark around 6:00 in the morning. They're playing morning games in this league right now. So work out, hang out, players show up. I try to maximize my touch points. So I like to call it a clubhouse crawl. I'm going into the clubhouse, just kind of getting a vibe on what's going on, how the boys are feeling, and just making myself available should any of them want to talk in kind of a one-on-one setting. And again, it's an informal interaction, because that's just the nature of professional sport, is having guys come into your office. It will happen, but the majority is just informal interactions. Guys want to talk, we'll go on a walk and talk, as we call it. We'll walk around the stadium. We'll go out to lunch. We'll go out to dinner. So just maximizing touch points. That can be in the clubhouse, that's on the field during batting practice. Because I'm a baseball guy, I hit fungos, I throw batting practice. So like, I'm just around to help the guys feel comfortable. We have team workshops and team education seminars. So we'll have the groups of pitchers come in, and we'll share a mental skill or go through a meditation, those types of things, along with hitters, catchers, our players rehabbing. So maximizing touch points individually, and then as groups as well. And then when we go out on the road and meet up with our other teams, our AAA, AA, high A, and low A clubs, kind of the same type of situation, except just pushed a little bit later in the day because they're playing night games. And that's kind of what it looks like. Really informal touches, and just keeping a good vibe check on the guys. Certainly we have our players that we meet with every week on kind of a systematic basis.
By being present for those players on a regular basis, are you finding that it's easier to create that bond? It's easier to create that trust? And I say that because for example, a high school coach may only really have access to his players for a limited amount of time, right? They
Yeah.
don't have the ability to show up at 6 a.m. and hang out and work out and go to BP and and then the game's at 3 and we can talk after the game, et cetera, whatever it is. How can a high school coach, how can a youth coach get involved with a player at that level? And meaning maybe it's not that extensive, but the reality is I see high school teams all the time who have culture issues, or there's individuals within that team who are obviously really struggling. And I don't think the way that model set up allows for those coaches to be as good as mentors as they could be, just simply based off time. So if I'm a high school coach and I got 3 guys, I know they're struggling, and obviously my high school is not going to bring in a mental performance coach, but I need to get out. I need to hear these kids. I need to talk to these kids. What do you recommend for a high school coach? What's the best way to approach that?
Yeah, that is hard, especially as a high school coach. I know you're not getting paid. You're probably losing money being a high school coach. You're probably teaching. You've got a family. Like, the time commitment that high school coaches are involved in is like, mad respect. Like, I tip my cap to you. So again, the relationship piece is huge. If a kid doesn't think you care about them, they're not going to care about what you tell them. So I think there are ways to get creative where you can maximize your time. And a couple of things that initially come to mind is environmental design. What posters are you having in the clubhouse or the locker room? What text messages are you sending out? Are you maybe taking a video of a message that you want to send to the players on about team culture that you can kind of blast out to your entire high school organization? And so you can kind of scale what that might look like on a one-on-one basis to just let the players know that you care about them. And I think that it will take some time on the front end to organize that: phone numbers, emails, Team Snap, whatever medium you use to deliver information. But I do think that you can create an environment where you are getting touches with players without being there one-on-one. And I just think of how Google has created what their environment looks like at Google headquarters. And so much of human behavior is shaped based on what's around us. And we can manipulate that as a high school baseball coach or as a mental performance coach that shapes behavior simply from the environment that you create. So definitely creative ways to do so. Again, posters, paintings, like team mottos, text messages, those types of things can scale out those interactions.
Let me ask you the $1 million question now. How can parents of youth athletes, youth players, what can they do as a parent now that will help support and foster a good relationship with their player, right? Because we see so much of the opposite, like just craziness sometimes. How can that parent who does get those touch points still have that, be that parent and that supporter, but also help guide that player a little bit?
Yeah. Wow. That's a really good question. And I think it's something that needs to be talked about more. And I appreciate you guys for providing this platform on your podcast. I would imagine that's a question that you ask other guests as well. And so props to you guys for bringing this out and starting the conversation. A couple of things come to my mind. First, let your kid play and let the coaches coach. I think youth coaches, they're so worried about what the parent's going to say. The kid's worried about what their parents are going to say. And it puts the kid in a weird position of, do I listen to the coach? Do I listen to my parent? I've gone to travel teams. The kid strikes out and immediately he's looking over to see his dad's response. That totally takes the fun out of the game. So first would be let your kid play and let the coaches coach. The second would be praise effort instead of praising results. If you want your kid to enjoy playing and he goes 0 for 4, didn't get a hit, man, you ran the bases so hard today. I'm so proud of you. Not even mentioning the strikeout, because that frames the failure in a way that, like, he can actually learn from that, as opposed to, I didn't get a hit. So praising effort over failure is huge. And then the third piece of what parents can do is read the book by Carol Dweck called Mindset. And if you want only one chapter, send me a text or an email and I'll send you the PDF of the chapter. That might be illegal, so I'll take that off. Buy the book Mindset by Carol Dweck. And there's one chapter, I think it's, I don't know, chapter 19, something like that, where it talks about helping to foster a growth mindset for your child and what you can do as a parent to help them do that. And it's framing what failure looks like. It's helping them understand that they can learn from their failure as opposed to feel threatened by it. And so that would be the third thing is read that chapter by Carol Dweck.
There's a quote out there that says you can be a coach, you can be an umpire, and you can be a parent. But you can't be all three. Right. And I really want, I love that you just said that, because one of our major goals is in the podcast, what we talked about is to get that information to parents. Just be a parent, just support them. And it's so like the mindset of a player. And I can go from my mindset to players that I work with, or rather my mindset just in my daily job. If I feel something's personal, if I feel attacked, if I feel I'm not performing, if I rather I did or not, I'm going to build walls. I'm going to shut down. And I hear as jokes all the time at the ballpark, oh, this is going to be a tough ride home for Johnny today. Oh God, I don't want to get in the car with my husband and wife today. It's going to, that's a problem. That's a problem. We've put in place in our family. And I'm not saying we're better than anyone else, but you have 5 minutes. That 5 minutes can be good. That 5 minutes can be bad. Whatever it is, you got 5 minutes. And when that 5 minutes hits, we're not going to talk about it anymore. And we've put a really strong focus on the idea of, okay, you went 1 for 3 with a double. You didn't strike out twice. You went 1 for 3 with a double. That's different. It's the same thing, right? But the way it's said, the way it's perceived, the way it's approached, it's that positive mindset, that plus you did good today, knowing that, as you know better than anyone in baseball, you're not expected to do good. Right? That's the reality. The reality is you're expected to not do great today. And in fact, you banged a double off the wall, and that's amazing. So I love that you said that. And I love that idea where parents have tools to grasp on, because sometimes you get in the car and the kid's upset and dad's upset and the coach yelled at the players, and there's so much chaos, there's so much stimulus going on that no one knows how to make any sense out of it at all. But if parents can just keep a common idea, we're going to get in the car. We can talk about the game. We're going to talk positively, right? If you got to air your grievances out, air them out. Fair enough. It's not going to be personal. We're not going to point fingers. We're going to look at it simply as what it was, a game. And I think that changes the approach of parents, because it's almost like it's a joke sometimes at the ballpark. They're just like, oh, this ride home is going to be terrible, and they laugh about it. I'm not sure why that's laughable. Maybe that's just me. But gosh, man, you've got young minds. You've got these people that are trying to develop, not to be Major League Baseball players, to simply be productive citizens in the society. And if you're beating them down like a hammer and a nail, I think there's damage being done there. And I want to thank you for saying that, because that's a huge bridge that I'm personally trying to build. That let's not forget, baseball is a game. Are you going to get upset over checkers? Are you going to get upset over Monopoly? Are you going to get upset over Mario Brothers? Same thing, right? So is it possible for us to swing that pendulum to really get that education to parents? And what do you think it's going to take to make that happen? Knowing not everyone's going to do it, and that's fine. Once again, I'm not trying to police it, but how do we get parents to buy into this? Like, hey, baseball is not life. I hate that shirt that says baseball is life. Baseball is a piece of life. How do we get that across?
Yeah, really good question. And I think we could probably make a lot of money if we are able to figure this one out. With you sharing what you just said about, I love the 5-minute rule. That's awesome. Yeah, we're going to talk about it. Boom, that's it. It's over with. It reminds me of a story that a colleague told me, also a mental performance coach in the major leagues with a different team. And he said that he had a dad call him and say, hey, I've got my 12-year-old son who's really, really struggling. He's struggling at the plate. He doesn't look like he's having fun, and I just don't know what's going on with him. Can you meet with him? And my friend said, yeah, of course, bring him on by. So the father brought his son to the office, and the father is explaining to my friend all the problems that the kid has, that he's going through, can't hit the ball, striking out, he's crying. And my friend says, okay, that's awesome. Why, like, anything else that you want to tell me? And the dad goes, yeah, I'm just here because I love my son. And now all of a sudden the kid started crying. And my friend is like, wait, what? Why are you crying now? And the son said, I didn't know that my dad loved me. And my buddy said, well, I think my work here is done. You guys can go back, and if you have any other problems or challenges, be sure to reach out. And so sometimes the parents, and you guys know probably more than I do, the parents want it more than the kid, to the point that the kid doesn't even know that their parents love them. That doesn't answer the question of how can we scale this type of parent behavior that is supportive and growth minded with their players. But I think we can do our own part as parents, as coaches, to embody what really baseball is all about. And you said it's a piece of life. It's not life, it's a piece of life. It shapes behavior, it creates men, it creates better leaders, better husbands. And if we can frame it as such, I think parents and others will catch on. But that story, again, just like that had a profound impact on me. I don't have any children yet, but yeah, don't lose sight of our love for our kids, and that baseball is just a piece of life, and then embodying that for hopefully others to see and catch on as well.
Yeah, I think, it's such a great learning, like baseball, in my opinion, and we could be biased because we're all baseball guys, but I think it's like one of the best life lesson games that you could possibly play, right? Like there's failure, there's bad hops, right? Things in life come at us that we don't expect. And you can take so much from that. So it's like, how are you framing that, in your everyday life to raise a kid, right? It's such a great lesson. It's such a great tool to use to teach life. And I think, not to get too philosophical here, but I just don't think that's focused on enough. And we're so focused on the tangibles, stats, trophies, championships, right? But at the end of the day, how many guys end up where you are? Not a lot, right? We end up, interviewing for jobs, becoming teachers, becoming lawyers, becoming salespeople, opening our own businesses. Like that's what it comes down to. And so I loved everything that you just said there. Is like, it's just a piece of the puzzle, right? And that's it. And we can use it as a tool. If you're good enough to go make money doing it, more power to you. But like, let's reframe it in a realistic way.
And to that point as well, you made me think about the parallels of baseball and life, and how often baseball games are won, or our statistics, the statistics that most people know, are influenced by uncontrollable factors. You may go 4 for 4 and break your bat 4 times on bloop singles, and at the end of the day, you are feeling like $1,000,000 because you were 4 for 4, but you didn't hit a ball over 70 miles an hour off the bat. Or maybe it was, you mixed in a swinging bunt in there. Well, you might have a teammate that hit 4 piss rockets at 105 miles an hour, 1, 2, 3, 4, with nothing to show. But from a analytical standpoint, the dude that hit the 4 missiles, he completely destroyed the guy that got 4 hits, who hit the ball weakly. And so being able to evaluate really what's in your control, and from a baseball standpoint, that is, did you swing at a good pitch, and how hard did you hit it? You can't control really the direction to where you're hitting the ball. And so same thing in life. You may win, you may lose, but are you evaluating what's in your control? And doing so is a really healthy way that shapes behavior, and it shapes the way that we view events that occur to us or that we incur on others. Was it in our control, and how well did we do that? Did we execute it?
I'm going to put you on the line for one more question, Adam. Then we'll let you go.
Yeah.
Give us a few sentences of information for the player who is trying to get his mind right. A few sentences for the information for the player who is going to listen to this, or the parent who's going to listen to this, and somebody is struggling. A comprehensive, if you will, wrapped up in a nutshell information shot that they can put in their back pocket and they can pull out when they need it, a tool.
Wow, there I got a lot going on in my head, but to synthesize it, this is a really good exercise. I'm happy you asked me this. What you are experiencing to a high school player whoever is listening to this, whether you're a parent, player, you're a big leaguer, what you're experiencing, the best in the world are also experiencing. But what they do is they choose to take action despite uncomfortable thoughts and feelings. So you may think that your coach hates you and that you're going to strike out or you can't throw a strike. Well, guess what? Big leaguers are thinking the exact same thing. But what they're doing right now is they're acknowledging that they're thinking that, and they're going out and giving it their best despite having those thoughts that are clouding their mind. And so you can take action in the presence of uncomfortable thoughts and uncomfortable feelings. It's hard, and it's hard to do because we get tied up in the voice that's pestering us inside of our head. But we have little control over the thoughts that pop up into our head. We have complete control over how we choose to take action and where we choose to direct our focus and attention. So what you're going through is completely normal. What you're thinking and feeling is normal, but you can choose to take action in the presence of those uncomfortable thoughts and feelings.
It's awesome, man. That's perfect. And that's exactly what I was looking for. We talked to a mental performance coach, Riley Jensen, a few podcasts
Oh,
ago,
yeah.
and he said A plus R equals O. Action plus response equals outcome. And really, easier said than done, kind of as you said it, but really that's a pretty straightforward equation. The way you perceive something, the way you engage with something, that intrusive thought process, it'll never leave you alone, right? It's going to be there in one way or another. But the way we respond to that guy, that talk, that person, whatever it is really going to direct us in the outcome of good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's really a straightforward equation to me. And I've been using that with a bunch of my clients just in everyday mental health practice, as well as with athletes. A plus R equals O. Action plus response will equal outcome. And so I really appreciate that, man. And Adam, where can the listeners find you? Twitter, Instagram, like if they want to access you, if they want to follow you, where can they find you?
Yeah. Twitter and Instagram, my handle is @AdamLaw217. And then my bootleg website is mojolab.com. And then feel free to email me, adam@mojolab.com, or slide into my DMs. I'm an open book. I feel strongly about giving back and answering any questions that anybody may have. So I make it a priority to spend some time of when people reach out. So yeah, that's where folks can find me.
What is Mojo Lab?
So Mojo Lab is my consulting practice. So along with my full-time gig with the Dodgers, I consult with various high performers in the professional ranks, in the college ranks, and then in the youth ranks as well, and parents. So
I got a high school kid, I got a junior high kid, I've got a kid in college, whatever it may be, they can access you.
Yeah, 100%. I work with probably 18, 20 individual clients, and we've got a battle rhythm where we meet once per week and send in texts, and I have an app that we kind of keep track of where guys are at and girls are at, and so yeah, it's a whole thing. It's been really rewarding.
Give me that website again.
Mojolab.com.
Mojolab.com.
Yeah.
Okay, man, I appreciate it. Nick, you got anything?
No, we appreciate it. Like I did slide into Adam's DMs and he did respond, right? So this is real life proof. We have met before, but I want to thank you for your time. I thought this was a great conversation. Your ability to be accessible is huge to, I think, changing the how we think about mental health and our thought process in sports. So I appreciate that. And it's just good to know you're doing so well. So thanks for hopping on with us, and hopefully we can do this again.
I appreciate it. And I understand that there's a lot of people that you can reach out to jump on your podcast. So the fact that you would reach out to me and go out of your way to find me on Instagram and send me a message really means a lot. And then taking an hour plus of your day to chop it up with me is really cool. So I too also appreciate it.
Represent the 801, man. The 801.
You know it.
All right, Adam. Thanks, bud. We're going to talk again. I really appreciate it. And we'll send some stuff here in your way, but I'd like to keep an open line of communication. And like I said, just keep working through things. And obviously we're always available, and thank you for being available as well.
Heck yeah. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
All right, man. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll talk soon.
Okay. You too.
Right. Thanks, man. Bye-bye.
See ya.